The Other Side of Fear, a Backpacker's Memoir by Jenni Reavis. Unhidden Heroines Series, Book Number 1. Chapter 3, Hostal Masaya. Obviously, traveling taught me about myself and about life, but what it taught me the most is that nothing goes as planned, yet no matter what, everything will be okay. I had started to do a wonderful job at truly believing everything was working in my favor. And curveballs didn't really shake me up so much. It was all a part of the adventure. However, I struggled to be positive sitting there on the littered pavement, watching this big mess of frantic people. I was grateful in that moment that Rie had insisted on taking me to get data put on my phone during our last time together, so I could communicate without being dependent on a Wi-Fi network. I couldn't imagine how much more scary the situation would be if I couldn't use my phone to make calls or send texts. I searched for hostels and hotels in Bogota and learned that the few still open for business were not accepting foreigners. I felt my stomach growl, and it seemed to complement the chill in my bones from the cold, rainy Bogota climate. I was once again exhausted at a soul level. A cab pulled up and two guys got out. They saw I had a cigarette and therefore had a lighter, so they asked if they could join me for a smoke. I have always loved the 8-minute chit-chats over a cigarette with strangers. I have had many divine encounters like that whenever I least expected. They were from Belgium and Romania and were there to catch their humanitarian flight back home. My nerves were too shaken to really talk, so I listened to their crazy experience getting shuttled out of the village where they had been stranded. The Romanian guy let his friend do all the socializing, but as they were finishing the last drag of their smokes and loading their bags on their backs, he chimed in. "Hey, if something happens today preventing you from flying, you should try Masaya Hostal for a place to stay. We just came from there. The owners are keeping their doors open for foreigners. Good luck." And off they went. I was reminded that the universe always shows up. Sometimes we just have to wait a little bit longer. I hopped in a taxi and off to Masaya I went. Once I got my things stuffed in my bunk there, I noticed I had received an email from the United States Embassy notifying of a humanitarian flight sent by United Airlines for the following Saturday. I had used most of my remaining funds for the fake ticket, so I couldn't book any more flights. But my mom insisted that I use her card to reserve my seat. See, in the United States, a humanitarian flight doesn't mean it's free. So I would be at Hostal Masaya for a few days. It was absolutely amazing. The beds were warm and comfortable. The architecture was beautiful. There was a big group of German and French people there waiting to catch their humanitarian flight. I usually sat with my earbuds in, studying German, eavesdropping on their conversations to see what words I recognized. We all shared the same co-ed bathroom in the main hallway, so whenever I would shower, the bathroom would be full of naked German people using the mirrors and waiting their turns for the toilet stalls. My anxiety was extraordinarily high because of how everything had happened and the uncertainty of everything. I wanted to drink so bad, especially when every night all the Germans would sit on the outside patio drinking bottles of wine and rum. They always offered me a cup, but no matter how bad I wanted it, I kept saying no. If I could make it sober through a martial law lockdown in a foreign country, I could make it sober through anything. Also, studying another language aided in dissipating my anxiety. I was in a small room that had 2 bunk beds, or 4 beds total, and I shared my room with 2 German girls and another girl named Anastasia, who was born in Russia but had migrated to Germany with her family when she was younger. She spoke 5 languages and loved to help me with the grammar parts of my German lessons. She didn't get along with the girl above me, who usually sat in her bunk talking loudly on her phone with her bunk shade pulled down. Actually, nobody got along with that girl on the bunk above me. Anastasia loved letting her know it too. They would start to argue in German or Russian, and Anastasia always had the last word. On Thursday night, I received an email from United Airlines that my scheduled Saturday flight was canceled. My mom would call to figure out a refund or a reschedule. I felt powerless and scared. The embassy informed me that although Saturday's humanitarian flight through United had been canceled, they would offer another one through Spirit Airlines on the Monday after. But I had to submit an application of interest and wait to be contacted. I immediately submitted my application. The following Sunday night, I was sitting downstairs with my German friends learning new words when I got a call from a guy at the embassy. Did I still want a seat on the plane for the following day? Yes. He instructed me to be at the U.S. Embassy there in Bogota at 6 a.m. sharp the next morning. I shared my news with the group, who toasted in my favor and wished me the luck on my journey back to the States. And then I ran off to shower and pack. I went to sleep with my suitcases totally packed, dressed to travel early. I was sitting on the couch at dawn the next morning, after a sleepless night, listening to the quiet of the hostel, wondering what would be in store for me at the embassy, what going to the airport would be like in the midst of all this bullshit, what would be waiting for me in the States. Thankfully, I had an impulse to check my email and discovered that in the middle of the night I had received another email saying that the flight for that day was canceled. Canceled 4 hours after I had hung up the phone with the immigration official calling to confirm my seat, packed my things, and bid tearful farewells. The flight had canceled. The email stated I could submit another application for the next humanitarian flight that would leave on Wednesday. At that moment, I decided that I would submit one more application, and if that door did not open for a flight, I was choosing to stay. There must be a reason why I haven't been allowed to leave. Maybe I still have a purpose to fulfill here, I thought. Maybe my anxiety is coming from resisting that. I never got a call back for that flight the following Wednesday, so I was choosing to stay. That same Monday that my flight canceled, most of the people in our hostel caught their flight back to Europe, leaving behind just a small handful of us to share the whole hostel space. There was Lucas from France, who put together our daily workouts on the patio every afternoon. There was Slavko, an actor from Venezuela who had just been a star in the movie 2 Autumns in Paris. And there was Alex from Zimbabwe, who ran his own graphic design business online. He worked on his computer night and day. 2 young French guys and a French couple showed up and stayed for a while. Christian, Andres, Kelly, and Marta, and Marta's kids, whenever she brought them, were the employees who took turns rotating 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. When the big group left to go back to Europe, I was left in my room all alone, which for me was absolute bliss. Even though public transport was completely shut down, shipment companies were still in service. Consuelo, the lady I rented a room from in Medellin, was kind enough to pack all my things in 2 boxes and ship them to me, right to the doorstep of our hostel. One night, after everyone went to bed, I pulled a square table into my room from the lounge outside and made my room a cozy nook, with a place to sit and work in the silent privacy of my own glorious space. In one of those boxes was my precious laptop, so I was immediately able to start getting online for some hours for the online company I had worked for on and off for 2 years, tutoring English. I unpacked all my things and organized my whole room, making it all mine, just the way I needed it to be to feel sacred, safe, and welcoming. It was time to start writing my book. In the afternoon, I taught for 2 or 3 hours, and in the morning and night times were all mine to dive into the process of writing. What had initially seemed terrible would turn out to be a time full of so much love and many treasures with new people crossing my path that would turn out to be lifelong friends. I was usually the first one awake, and I would make myself a big healthy breakfast with a big cup of Colombian coffee. I took it outside to enjoy myself on the patio, usually with my journal. One day, my morning solitude was cut short when a handsome, bearded guy, who I had never seen before, appeared in the doorway upstairs and came down to join me. He was looking for the best place in Bogota to hunker down for a few months and focus on editing his documentary. This guy was different from any human I had ever met. He was really rough around the edges and didn't get along with anyone, which I was capable of understanding. And it was the trauma we had both been through that brought us together, I believe. That he said some words that forever marked me. After I had also shared some of my story, and I told him about my book project, he said this to me: "Don't put anything less than your whole heart into it. Do whatever you have to do to make that possible. Set boundaries. Throw your phone away if you have to. And whenever you get blocked in your writing process, because you will, remember why you wanted to do it. Be as real as you can and fuck everyone else. Do you, be you, and never look back, Jenni. This is your work, your life, your signature for the world. Nobody else has lived your story, and nobody can do your path like you. Never be scared to be unapologetically the most authentic version of yourself that you can possibly be. Whoever doesn't like it can fuck off. One day, he mysteriously disappeared just as quickly as he had appeared on the first day he joined me for breakfast. I always wondered where he went or how his documentary work was going. My time in lockdown, although seemingly hopeless and terrifying in many ways for the whole world, turned out to be something absolutely pivotal for me in a wonderful way. Although it was devastating to have my opportunities for rogue backpacking adventures stripped away, for the first time in my life, I was still. I thought that I had already been still when I first started traveling on that one-way ticket nearly 3 years prior to where I found myself in lockdown. The pace of Colombian life was so different from the pace of life in the United States. But this was a new kind of still. One that made me realize that I had never ever been truly still for an extended period, especially not sober. I no longer had the distraction of rogue exploratory adventure on the outside of me, and had nothing but time on my hands to begin a rogue exploratory adventure through the depths on the inside of me. I had already responded to the deep cry from my soul that had begun begging to give birth to this book. When I had begun piecing together handwritten scratches of my story in those hidden nooks of my Medellin hood, I felt this was a huge turning point. The words that Brigue gave me in Villa de Leyva reverberated in me every day. Life in the streets of Bogota in the midst of a global pandemic was a stark contrast from the cozy nook I made for myself in my room at Masaya. The economic situation in Colombia was a rocky one, and the process of recovery after 50 years of political violence before the pandemic hit. But with everything getting shut down because of COVID, it was a life or death situation for many in terms of hunger and violence. The weight of hopelessness and desperation in the air outside the hostel was so heavy that it felt so hard to breathe. The lockdown procedures were extremely strict, only allowing one person per household to leave for essential items like food or medicine for 1 hour on the days that coordinated with the last number of their passport, per government mandate. People broke into homes just to steal food, and I heard rumors that in the area, police officers were raiding hostels and holding foreigners hostage for ransom. My expat friends from other countries like Bolivia and Argentina told me that the situation was the same where they were quarantined. There were police and military officers on every corner stopping every passerby for interrogation, which sometimes made me feel more safe and sometimes more in danger. They asked me the same questions as the officers had asked me in Villa de Leyva when the pandemic first hit. They always asked me what hostel I was staying in, and I always lied. I couldn't trust anyone. Face masks were mandatory everywhere, even just walking down the street with nobody else around. Any foreigner caught breaking the new countrywide mandate would be subject to an outrageous fine or placed in Colombian jail, or both. At the grocery store, there was always a long line of people waiting to go in, spaced 6 feet apart per stickers on the ground, and upon entry, I got sprayed down with disinfectant to the bottoms of my feet and was obligated to use hand sanitizer. I only ventured outside into that reality once a week. I taught English online a couple of hours a day, which gave me the opportunity to connect with adult students from around the world. They shared their perspectives of the pandemic in Japan, Oman, Turkey, Algeria, Brazil, China, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and Vietnam. The feelings of vulnerability, urgency, fear, and desperation were mutual with every one of my students, but that allowed us to connect more intimately as humans than I had ever experienced while teaching. Outside of my time teaching, I knew it was time to start putting my soul into my book. I had no idea where to start. I was so scared of revealing myself at such a vulnerable level, but the mysterious, bearded man's words resonated in me. They made me think, Why did I want to write this book? What was my why? I had once heard an influencer say, whenever you make it to the other side of something really hard, you have the responsibility of sharing your testimony about it with others to help them. That was my why. So I continued writing. After 2 months in lockdown at that hostel in Bogota, I got let go for my online teaching job. Although they never gave me an explanation, I feel that it has everything to do with me sharing the link to my YouTube channel with my students. Haha. I was forced to make a very difficult decision because I knew that without income I couldn't stay. I decided to let my dad help with a plane ticket for a humanitarian flight back to the States. I never imagined leaving Colombia like that, but I chose to accept it and be open. I only had a few days to say my goodbyes, close things that needed to be closed, leave behind things that needed to be left behind and pack. I didn't feel good about going back, and I was so scared that once I got there I would be stuck somehow, although I had no idea what would be on the other side of this new veil, just as I hadn't known what was on the other side of so many. I felt ready to push through it and be open to anything waiting for me on the other side. As I finished packing, I took quiet time to finish reading a memoir on my laptop Kindle. It was called A Girl in the Woods, a memoir by Aspen Mattis. In her book, she shares an intimate account of being sexually assaulted her first semester of college, dropping her classes and embarking on a very dangerous hiking adventure on the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada. It was no coincidence that at the end of her book, upon being invited as a guest speaker to tell her truth at the university that she had left behind, she said, "The bravest thing I ever did was leave there. The bravest thing I did was come back to make myself hurt." Yeah, indeed it was, and indeed it would be. The next day I boarded my flight back to Oklahoma City, and I began the 9 months it would take to unravel my story for this book. I gift to you my story.